What if I were to promise you that, 10 years from now, I would still remember you? That I would recall with perfect clarity the exact text of the comment you left, your username, your avatar? Could be a nice thing to hear. Could possibly make you feel quite special. Perhaps even change how you think of me. Maybe you weren't expecting that level of attention, especially from a YouTuber, if you want to call me that. But then imagine those 10 years pass, and contrary to my word, you have gone from my mind entirely. Quite a different feeling then, right? You might never think of me in exactly the same way. It might just make you want to step away from watching these videos, and I wouldn't blame you at all. A promise is a powerful thing. You don't need me to tell you this, it's part of the fabric of your world. People make promises to each other, and although it's only intersocial, only psychological, only a word given from one person to another, it matters. So much that promises have found their way into the very stories you tell. To you, they are more than profound. They are magical. And I would like to show you how. So, let's talk about promises as a magic system. If you're enjoying Tale Foundry, don't forget that we have a whole community outside of YouTube. We do a lot of stuff on a lot of different sites, but the best place to start is with our official Discord server. It's open to everyone, and it's probably one of the nicer art communities on the internet. It really feels like a big family of creatives. I hope we'll see you there. The reason I'm thinking about all of this is because of a series of books I've been reading. A very big series of books. Then again, all of Brandon Sanderson's books are big, which is why I tend to stay a safe distance from them. This one is called the Stormlight Archive, and of all the interesting things it does, and there are many, I was most captivated by the way these books treat promises. The world of Stormlight is one of ideals. Here, mental concepts exist on another plane of reality in the form of living, thinking beings called spren. They're usually separate from the physical world, but under the right conditions, they manifest as mostly harmless, sprite-like shadows of their true selves, each drawn to their source. Battlefields are swarmed by the orange, rake-fingered hands of pain spren reaching towards the wounds of the injured. Lovers are dusted with tiny flakes of crystalline snow, the worldly shape of the passion spren seeming to fall from nowhere at all. The wind or the fire or the rain might be full of elemental spren, a ribbon of light dancing on the breeze, insectile shapes playing among the coals, tiny gray figures weeping in the puddles. And people can draw out spren too. When you become close enough to an ideal or a concept, when you spend enough time pursuing something like justice or liberation, the spren associated with it might just notice you, and if it does, there's a chance it finds its way to you and binds itself to you. So you sort of acquire a cool magical familiar who gives you the ability to do some vague, magic-y things. Very nice, but the real magic, the truly fantastical stuff, flight, teleportation, transformation, destruction, these can only be unlocked through a promise. Make a true oath to your ideal, the very thing which your spren embodies, and your spren will become more real than ever. You'll become its anchor in the physical world, and far from a mindless manifestation, it will cross over entirely, intact and sentient, and able to give you access to its full suite of fabulous, reality-bending powers. So, that's a lot, but the key thing that I find so interesting about this is that it isn't a bargain. You're not selling your soul to the devil, you're not striking up a contract with a creature of the Fae, and yeah, those are really interesting topics, and we will make videos about those kind of promises for sure, but I love the altruism of this. You're just making a promise, and really expecting nothing in return. And almost karmically, the magic responds to that, elevates it. Your promises literally change reality in this world. And here's the fun part. This is not actually a new idea. Humans have been trying to do this with promises for ages. If you look back at the Greek origin of formal oath-taking as a practice, you can see it. Oaths weren't just commitments you made to other people. They were more powerful than that because you would invoke a supernatural arbiter, that is, a god of some kind, to enforce your promise. The words, "as God is my witness," become a sort of binding magic. Now, should you break that promise, instead of simply hurting someone else's trust or their feelings, you're calling down the judgment of something divine. But promises are complex, and there are a lot of other ways I can imagine mystifying them in our fiction. How might magic work differently for a promise broken or a promise kept? How might it affect the one making the promise, and would that be different from how it would affect the one receiving it? There's a lot of room for the imagination to play here, but let me show you some of the things people have come up with so far. In the case of a promise kept, magic usually becomes a sort of karmic reward. With no pressure from the outside, you've done the right moral thing. Now the universe will reward you for it. The Stormlight Archive really plays with this well, Spren drawing to you purely based on your devotion to your ideal. That's how you get all your cool high fantasy magic. But this doesn't have to be about unlocking cool, spectacular powers. Sometimes it's simpler than that. In Game of Thrones, there is a massive wall of ice that separates the civilized world from the dangers of the frozen north. A special group of guardsmen called the Night's Watch man the wall and sound out an alert if anything dangerous is threatening to breach it. These sworn guardsmen have dedicated their lives to their duty, and they're the only ones who can really pass through the wall. Because far beneath it, there is a secret door made of living, ancient wood. It has a wrinkled face and blind white eyes, but it will nevertheless know when you're approaching, and it will ask who you are. If you've sworn your vows as a man of the Night's Watch, you can repeat them to the door, and it will determine whether you speak the truth. If you do, it will open its mouth wide and allow you through. Sometimes the commitment itself is the source of the magic. Paths may open, allies may be won, all manner of magics may be worked, if you only honor your word. Usually, the magic is really only there for the one keeping the promise. Like I said, it tends to be a reward for their apparent morality. Plus, it would seem weird for the person who received the promise to also get some kind of magical boon. Isn't it enough that someone kept their promise to you? Don't you already benefit? It sort of just seems like double prizes at that point. But I can think of a few situations where this would actually make a lot of sense, specifically in the case of gods. I mean, devotion is a sort of promise when you think about it, right? And the magic really just flows from there. My two favorite examples of this are the books American Gods by Neil Gaiman and Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. The story of American Gods is full of withered, anemic deities slowly dying because very few people in the New World believe in them anymore. They scrabble at the leftover scraps of devotion, sustaining themselves through cons, cunning, and coercion. There's a goddess of love who lures men back to her home and persuades them to become her willing sacrifices in the bedroom, and that's devotion enough for her. There are two gods of death who work in a morgue, where people entrust their dead to them. Again, devotion enough, but just barely. The book Small Gods is a little different from that, but not by much. It follows a once great deity who finds himself at the brink of annihilation. Why? Because no one truly believes in him anymore. They believe in the institutions that sprung up around him, they believe in the motives that they invoke his name for, but not him. In this fragile state, he can only physically manifest in the form of a lowly tortoise. Luckily, there is one person left who, despite the fact that his god is now a tortoise, stays true. And that promise, that true devotion, is enough to help this deity scrabble back into his former glory, with some caveats about how people worship him. Stories with gods in them really are one of the few areas of fiction I can think of where being the recipient of a kept promise causes anything magical at all. But I can see room for other approaches here. Like maybe a situation where some kind of Rumpelstiltskin-esque figure extracts magical power just from getting people to make promises to it. Not from brokering a good deal and stealing someone's baby or whatever, just getting the promise from someone, period. There's power in that, and I would love to read some stories where it was elevated to the level of magic. But, of course, a promise made is not always a promise kept, and there are all sorts of stories about the magical consequences of breaking a promise. The same way magic can be earned through honoring your commitments, it can also be lost by breaking them. In the world of the Stormlight Archive, this is a pretty traumatic process. I was describing earlier how, through the presence of Spren and your relationship with them, your promises can give you power, how committing fully to an idea and honoring that commitment results in true magic. By the same token, a broken oath will cause that power to weaken or vanish altogether. You might go from a life of flying about as you please, healing yourself without any need for medicine, to a lowly life on the ground. The magic will leave you once again, and after living with it for so long, how do you return to normalcy? It would be a painful transition, to say the least. All of that makes sense. It's immoral to break a promise, so we can feel pretty good about dishing out consequences to the promise breaker, right? But it doesn't have to be like that, does it? I can imagine some circumstances where a promise made with the best of intentions turns out to be a bad thing for you, where the actual powerful thing to do would be, for your own sake, to admit that you need to go back on your word. I can see good reason to want to wrap a hard decision like this in some kind of magic. I can also see it as a sign that you are beyond empathy and compassion, which, while pretty dark, is also a source of power, in a sense. I could only really find one good example of a magic system where it's beneficial to you to break your promise, and that's the Oathbreaker Paladin subclass from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. These are paladins, warriors who have sworn oaths to their gods and received some power in return as long as they adhere to those oaths. But now they've decided to break their divine promises, and instead of just losing their powers outright like a vacuum, they're inverted. Now, instead of scaring the undead away with divine light, an Oathbreaker Paladin can seize control of them. Instead of channeling the divinity of their god into tangible energy, they can channel their own dark malice into something much crueler. So, although a broken promise feels like it deserves a punishment, there is also a sort of subversive power in the willingness to do it, regardless of the harm it might cause. But all of that says nothing about the poor recipient, who we should probably talk about as well, right? You make a promise to someone and then break it. What happens to them? Their trust is damaged, their expectations and hopes are shattered. Not a very pleasant experience. That's enough to go through on its own, so we don't tend to pile magical ramifications on too. It wouldn't seem fair, would it? Well, there are a few examples that point to the contrary. I mentioned how in the world of the Stormlight Archive, when you break your oaths, you lose your powers. Well, that's only half of it. The reason you lose your powers is because your spren, the physical incarnation of your ideal, the otherworldly companion who chose you and granted you your new magical life, is dying. They require you to adhere to your ideal. That's what anchors them in the physical world. And if you break that promise once they're here, they become less real. They fade into catatonic, lifeless forms known as dead-eyes. It's certainly one of the saddest things in the story, very much the feeling of watching a loved one suffer because of a choice you made. There's another really interesting example of this dynamic in Jim Butcher's book series, The Dresden Files. It's an urban fantasy setting where some attempt at formalizing magic has been made. There's a council of wizards who presides over magic users by and large, making sure none of them misuse their craft. A mage who goes astray and begins using black magic is typically put to a swift death, unless a member of this council speaks up on their behalf. If they want to give the offending mage a second chance, they take that mage's fate upon themselves. Now, if their charge missteps again, both of them will be put to death instead of just the offending mage. It's a promise made on someone else's behalf, and you suffer the consequences alongside them if they break it. They call this arrangement the Doom of Damocles. Both of these examples really feel so tragic to me. If you care about a person, one of the worst consequences of breaking a promise to them is watching the ways in which it hurts them. And we can imagine stories where that pain becomes a magical force which physically harms them as well. The dying of the spren, the Doom of Damocles. I can imagine the opposite of this as well, although I haven't really found any examples of it. It's easy to believe that benevolent magical forces might rally to the aid of someone who's had a promise broken to them. Maybe a lover has proven disloyal to you, and a goddess of love sees it and takes it upon themselves to punish the one who's hurt you. Maybe you are an orphan whose parents broke their promise to care for you, and the fey creatures who live in the nearby forest decide to give you the good life you missed out on, showering you with their riches and their adoration. Promises matter. And like all things that matter, it's a joy to see how and when they manifest in our fiction, the ways in which our fantasies raise them up. This was something that really struck me about the Stormlight Archive. Promises are so important in that world, they literally make the abstract real. And this is how we feel about promises in reality too. They are to us untapped potential, and someone willing to fulfill it. We showed you a few of the ways we've seen this explored in fantasy, but there are so many other possibilities. I'd love to hear what other ideas you can come up with in the comments. Of course, it's not always that easy, is it? We talk about making stuff up on this show like it's just a thing everyone does super effortlessly. But then, really, how do you just build a world? It's a whole skill set, something we sort of have to learn to do. And that can be really daunting. Thankfully, I've found something that makes this whole process incredibly simple. There's this amazing 12-part video series that gives you pretty much all the skills you need to get past your blocks and fears and start your world-building project. It's called Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds, hosted by many-time author and professor Lincoln Michael. As you move through the course, you'll learn about things like how to begin your new world, what the ripple effects of that starting idea will be like across your world, how to create themes within your world, how to create characters to experience the world you've made, and then, finally, how to put all of these things together. The prospect of making an entire world can be really paralyzing, but it doesn't have to be. This course will absolutely help you bring the size of the task down to something you can really understand and manage. I can say from experience that it is so liberating just to have a roadmap for a project like this. And thanks to our sponsor, Skillshare, you can actually watch the whole series for free. This is what Skillshare is all about, after all, providing a platform for creatives to stand up and share their skills with the community. And the community there is big. People have created classes on creative writing, illustration, fine art, animation, graphic design, film and video. For just about any creative field you can think of, experts have stepped up to share their knowledge on Skillshare. You can even join in on live classes, connecting with other creators and teachers while you learn. After talking to them about it, it seems like the people over at Skillshare can see why we're so excited about that world building class we were talking about earlier, so they've decided to give you the opportunity to experience it and any other Skillshare class that catches your interest for free. Until the end of February, the first 1,000 Tale Foundry fans who join the Skillshare community will get not just the usual 15-day free trial, but a full 30-day trial. An entire month of free learning and expert guidance on all the creative things you've ever wanted to do. Click the link in the description or the link at the end of the video to get started. And I would definitely hurry because those slots are going to fill up fast. Once you've watched through this world-building course, please come back to tell us the impact it's had on you as a writer. I cannot wait to hear the success stories. And that's it for this video. There's usually a few weeks between uploads, so if you want more Tale Foundry in the meantime, come join our community. We have a Discord server that's basically like a big family of creatives, a lot of love there. We also run writing groups on Twitch every week if you want to get some practice in. You can find links to all of it in the description. Hope to see you there. Until then, thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next time. Bye.